And the Singapore Grand Prix is underway. And Oscar Piastri is millimeters away from the wall. This is on board with Lando Norris. As you can see, Max Verstappen making his way by. And this was the lockup for Alex Albon battling up against Fernando Alonso.
Hugh, it's just
off the road goes Hulkenberg. Now, and there is the first offensive move for Max Verstappen.
so lovely stuff.
The 2025 Singapore Grand Prix is in the history books. The title fight is picking up steam again, and the results could also have significant implications in contract negotiations for next year. But who were the big-time winners and losers this time around? Join us to find out. Before we start unraveling the Singapore Grand Prix results, don't forget to like this video. And if you enjoy our content, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for the new videos, as it really helps to keep the channel going. Enjoy the rest of the video. George Russell dominated in Singapore, building up on his huge pole position to score a flawless victory on Sunday. Red Bull continued its upward trend, while McLaren has seemingly plateaued. What does the big picture look like though? These were the winners and losers under the lights at Marina Bay. Winner, George Russell. Following a great showing at Baku, in which he secured a solid runner-up finish while battling an unspecified illness, George Russell went one better in Singapore. The Brit delivered a scintillating lap in qualifying, setting 2 laps that would have been good enough for pole. On Sunday, Russell waltzed to his second win of the year. Contract negotiations were a big topic this week, as Mercedes has yet to announce Russell's extension. The Brit might have made Mercedes' job even more difficult, as his dominant display in Singapore will give him even more leverage. Russell has been playing hardball, knowing about Mercedes' not-so-subtle interest in signing Max Verstappen. The Brit needs guarantees, and it will either come in the form of a long-term deal or in the form of a large paycheck. Russell has reportedly drawn interest from Aston Martin as well. If he plays his cards right, Russell will secure a massive new contract. One man's joy is another man's sorrow, and on the other side of the Mercedes garage. Loser, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Things look increasingly grim for Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, and while the Italian seat isn't under threat for 2026, his F1 future surely looks a lot murkier following another disappointing showing. While Russell was in another postal code this week, it's clear that Mercedes had the pace in its car. Kimi Antonelli, however, failed to unlock it. Quite the opposite. He was way off. The Italian rookie held the fastest lap for a good part of the race, which once again shows that his Mercedes have enough pace for a much better result. Instead, Antonelli was down in qualifying and followed that up with a poor start in the race. Stuck in the middle of the pack, he finished a distant 5th. While Mercedes will likely extend his deal into 2026 due to a lack of better options, Antonelli will probably get a 1-year prove-it deal, with Mercedes set to go on the offense for Verstappen again ahead of 2027. The pressure is building up on the rookie, who was once regarded as a generational talent. Will 2026 be a make-it-or-break-it year? Speaking of Max Verstappen. Winner, Max Verstappen. Singapore is, arguably, Verstappen's bogus track. The Marina Bay Street circuit is the only track where Verstappen has yet to score a win or even a pole position. His runner-up finish this weekend was a massive boost of confidence. It's no secret that Red Bull has struggled around street circuits in the ground effect era. The team's design philosophy favors a stiff suspension, which naturally made the cars extremely sensitive to bumps. But Verstappen was on pace from FP1, and he followed it up with a career-best second on the grid. And while his gamble to start on softs didn't pay off, the Dutchman was able to fend off Lando Norris through the race. He didn't take a sizable chunk off of Oscar Piastri's advantage at the top of the table, but Verstappen did inch a bit closer to the Australian. He still has an outside shot at the championship, and the challenge is still very much on. Verstappen traditionally does well around the American lay of the schedule, so things are certainly looking up. Red Bull being competitive at Singapore, of all places, shows that the RB21 has the pace to contend at all kinds of circuits. There were questions about whether the Monza and Baku results were track-specific or a general trend. The answer is clearly the latter, which bodes well for the final 6 rounds. And one Red Bull driver will certainly need all the help he can get in these final 6 race weekends. Loser, Yuki Tsunoda. Coming off his best weekend at Red Bull, Tsunoda was keen on seizing the momentum. It marked a favorable trend for the Japanese driver, who had been getting a bit closer to Verstappen on pace. But things went the opposite direction in Singapore. Tsunoda went back to being a full second behind his teammate, which led to yet another Q2 elimination. Starting in the back of the field around one of the tightest tracks on the schedule effectively buried any hopes of scoring a good result on Sunday. With only 6 weekends to go, the clock is ticking for Tsunoda. Can he make enough of an impression to extend his stay at the main team for another season? At the very least, can he do enough to secure a Racing Bull's seat at the expense of Liam Lawson or Arvid Lundblad? It's worth remembering that Tsunoda will no longer have Honda to fall back on next season, so he really needs to get the job done in the remaining races. His shot went wide off the mark this weekend. Back to the top of the grid, one of the title contenders enjoyed a much better race, and one that could reignite his title aspirations. Winner, Lando Norris. During his 2024 title fight with Verstappen, Norris came under criticism several times for being too nice. He has finally learned the lessons. Norris made a rocketing getaway in Singapore and managed to get alongside Piastri exiting turn 3. The Brit made an aggressive move to get by for third place, banging wheels and almost putting his teammate in the wall. While Norris only took 3 points off Piastri, his aggressive move at the start was a strong letter of intent. It was the kind of aggression that he was missing last year. Norris is still on the back foot, but he is looking like a genuine threat now. Will McLaren finally take the kids' wheels off and let the two drivers battle it out? Now that the Woking squad has secured the Constructors' title, a win for a championship contender usually means a loss for his rival, and that was certainly the case in Singapore. Loser, Oscar Piastri. Coming off his worst weekend of the year, Piastri was looking for a chance to bounce back in Singapore. That, however, did not happen. The Australian lost ground to main title contender Norris, and he also dropped points to Verstappen. And while he still holds a substantial lead in the standings, the ramifications were bigger than they might look. Piastri was forced off the road by Norris at the start, with the pair banging wheels. Given how Piastri has repeatedly played the team game in 2025, the Australian's frustration with Norris' aggressive move is perfectly understandable. McLaren has historically favored British drivers internally, so Piastri will have to keep his eyes wide open. Do the papaya rules work differently for him and Norris? One thing looks certain, the often cool-headed Piastri is going to drop the nice guy act going forward. Singapore will go down in the loss column, but Piastri finally understands what it means to fight for a championship. The gloves are off. Piastri leaves Singapore trending down, but a certain former McLaren driver is certainly trending up following a superb drive. Winner, Fernando Alonso. The unluckiest driver in F1 history looks set to retain his title in Singapore, following a 10-second pit stop. But that ended up setting the stage for Alonso to show, once again, why he is an F1 legend. Starting 10th, the Spaniard was running a relatively comfortable race until his ill-fated pit stop. The two-time champion dropped down to 13th, and his race looked completely done. However, even on used mediums, he set off on an extremely unlikely recovery drive, proving that it is possible to overtake around Singapore on these big and heavy cars. Alonso picked one opponent after the other and methodically made his way up the order. The Spaniard legend eventually crossed the line 8th and almost passed former teammate Lewis Hamilton for 7th at the line. At 44 years young, Alonso shows no signs of slowing down. If Aston Martin delivers a competitive package with Adrian Newey and Honda next year, the Spaniard will be a genuine threat. Singapore has always been a happy hunting ground for Alonso, a two-time winner at Marina Bay. One of his former teammates, on the other hand, is more than happy to put this weekend behind him. Loser, Ferrari. After Baku, Ferrari lost third in the constructors' standings to Mercedes. The gap, however, was perfectly manageable, with the Scuderia only 4 points down on the German team, and Ferrari had a golden chance to fight back. The Scuderia is the most successful team in the history of the Singapore GP, with 5 wins. However, it soon became apparent that Ferrari wasn't going to be a contender this time. The team struggled on Saturday, with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc qualifying 6th and 7th, respectively. Things didn't improve on Sunday. Ferrari was nowhere to be seen, and the Italian squad finished a distant 6th and 7th. A late pit stop for Hamilton did not pay off, and the Brit almost lost a spot to Fernando Alonso on the final lap. There were big expectations for Ferrari heading into 2025, following the Hamilton signing and the encouraging results in 2024. But the team has endured a bad year overall. and, barring a miracle, looks set to go winless for the first time since 2021. Singapore was yet another largely forgettable weekend. Just like Alonso, a former Spanish Ferrari driver also stole the show under the lights. Winner, Carlos Sainz Jr. Another weekend and another smooth operation by Sainz. Fresh off his first podium with Williams, the Spaniard was keen on following it up with a solid points finish in Singapore. His hopes took a serious hit on Saturday, however, when the two Williams were disqualified for running an illegal upper DRS flap on their rear wings. Forced to start down in 18th, Sainz decided to run an alternate strategy. Sainz went long on his first stint, running on a set of hards, and bolted on a set of softs to finish off the race. His strategy paid off big time. On a track where overtaking is borderline impossible, Sainz made up 8 places to finish a respectable 10th, bagging up another point. Sainz usually does well around Singapore. On the other hand, another driver is more than happy to put this weekend behind them. Loser, Esteban Ocon. Singapore is Ocon's worst track, by a considerable margin. The Frenchman has 1 point in 7 starts at Marina Bay, with 2 DNFs. His poor trend continued this year. While teammate Oliver Bierman was one of the star performers this weekend, Ocon failed to match the British rookie. Caught out by a yellow flag in qualifying, the Frenchman was out in Q1 and had to start down in 17th. Ocon was nowhere to be seen on Sunday, finishing down in 18th and a lap down on Russell. On the plus side, Singapore is finally behind him now. That wraps up our winners and losers for the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix. Do you agree with our picks? In your opinion, who were the standout performers and who else failed to deliver? Share your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you next time.